Well, coming up, the Susie Guides Walk London. This is a great book. I was reading it last night. My feet were practically moving in my sleep after I finished reading it. Annie Coburn is going to be joining us here in studio, and so we'll be right back with more on our special London Olympic show. And welcome back to our all London special show, and we have a special guest in studio right now, Annie Coburn, who is the author of the Susie Guides Walk London, and you've come all the way from Austin, Texas. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
You know, I was reading this book last night and then again this morning, and it really is exciting to think about great walks around London. And you have quite a selection of them, don't you?
Yes. What we tried to do is we developed 9 walks that we felt were the essential must-see of London when people go to visit.
And there's nothing better than walking, because you accomplish several things. You get to see things you wouldn't see from a cab.
Absolutely.
And you get to walk off some of those calories from all that beer. Right?
That's true. But more than that, people who get on the buses, the tour buses, and you just, look from side to side, you really don't get the feel or the essence of how wonderful London really is. But as you walk, the pace slows down. You're able to investigate things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to see.
Right. Now, are these broken down into like shorter trips or longer trips?
Most of the walks range from 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on what the visitor wants to do. They may lengthen it, like maybe spend more time at the Tower of London or going through the Houses of Parliament, or they may say, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to concentrate on the Tate Modern. And so they have that flexibility with what we've designed rather than just being regimented to a particular tour.
And you have great photographs in the book, too, which really are enticing. I mean, these are beautiful photos of things to see. Is there a particular walk that you like that maybe is not so well known to the average visitor?
Well, maybe it's well known, but I think it is neglected by many of the people that go to London, and that is St. Paul's Cathedral. And here's the reason that it's one of my favorites. First of all, St. Paul's is the heart of London. During World War II, it did receive some damage, but it was so important to the psychology of the London people during the Blitz that they tried so hard to make sure that the bombs did not destroy St. Paul's. And so it's always been so special to the London people. And what we do is we don't just take an icon or a landmark and say, okay, head over to St. Paul's. What we do is we try to make the walk encompass everything that is around that area. For example, in St. Paul's, you would start at the Museum of London. This is a fantastic museum. It's the history of London beginning from when the Romans were there building the walls and things like that, all the way to modern time. Very interactive. And visitors, they don't even know it's there. But with Walk London, this is where we start. And then we move you over to St. Paul's, and then on across the Millennium Bridge, known as the Wobbly Bridge, onto the Tate Modern.
That's that little narrow pedestrian bridge.
Yes,
I've been across that.
Have you?
Oh, yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it actually is great because it spans the Thames. You look down and...
It does look very thin.
But it is thin.
It is thin. It is thin. But it is such a easy way to cross the Thames. And then Tate Modern, wonderful, wonderful modern museum. And then we end up at the restoration of Shakespeare's Globe Theater.
Ooh. Do we see Gwyneth Paltrow there?
I'm sorry.
I said, do we see Gwyneth
She's
Paltrow?
no, she's up north.
No, but,
at the
but
actual
didn't she do
tournament.
didn't she play a man in a
I think she
Shakespeare?
probably did.
You remember
Yeah.
that movie?
I don't.
It was a very famous movie. It'll come to me.
Now you have also, of course, because we're talking the Olympics in London,
Sure,
you have a
yes.
special section in
Yes.
this edition.
This is what we call our bonus section. When I would like to talk just briefly about the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. It was a spectacular event. Beijing went all out to tell the world we're for real.
Mm-hmm.
And right after that, if you will recall, the economy of the world just went
Tanked.
into
Except maybe for China. China seemed to continue along.
Yeah, true. And so here London is. They've won the 2012 Olympics, and they're going, oh dear, what are we going to do? There was no way they could outdo Beijing, and so I can imagine everybody sitting around scratching their head and going, what are we going to do now? And they came up with an incredible idea, and that idea is sustainability. And what their whole goal and focus was when they created their buildings and their grounds and everything that they wanted to do for the 2012 was that this would be usable long after the games had ended, were completed.
They really are giving new breath and life to the East End of London, for example.
Absolutely. This area was the area where the low-cost housing was, and many of the immigrants would find housing in this area, and it was
Pretty rough, as I recall. When I lived in London, I didn't even know the password to get into the East End of London.
And you didn't want to go.
No, you didn't want to go.
And you really didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And so what they've done is they've gentrified the area. They have taken down the old housing, but that's not the real key. The key is that the Olympic Village, once the Olympics and the Paralympics are over, what they will do is they will designate 1,300 apartments for low-income people. So now there is an opportunity for people to come in and have up-to-date, modern facilities at a reasonable price.
I wonder how many people were displaced when they had to build all those things, though.
Quite a few, actually, yes. But the thing about it is that now they will have an opportunity to come back to the community and to reestablish their lives in the East End.
Very nice.
Now, the Walk London is only one of several walk books you have. Tell us about some of the other ones.
Well, we have 4 walk books, and we started out actually with Walk Paris. And then from there we did Walk Beijing, Walk New York City, which we have just updated 2 months ago. It's brand new. And then Walk London is the last one we completed.
And these, of course, are available at all good bookstores, and I bet on Amazon.
Amazon.com.
Don't we all know about Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon.
Now, does the Susie Guides have a website?
Yes, we do.
What's your web URL?
www.fabplaces, and that's with a Z, placez.com.
Wow. And can you order it online directly?
Yes, you can order online, and you can order off the website as well.
What got you into doing these guidebooks?
Okay, it's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
I had worked all my life in corporate, and I finally got to the point where I said, okay, enough. And I went to Paris to live. And I lived on a 5-story walk-up. I had a wonderful, fabulous 4th-generation Parisian couple that lived on the 4th floor. And I got to know them, and one day we were sitting out in a cafe and sort of watching the tourists walk back and forth. And Bernard, the Parisian guy, he leans over to me and he says, if my English were better, I would write a real guide about Paris. And I went, voila.
Yeah.
And for the next 7 months, Bernard showed me Paris that no one has ever seen. Or, I mean, I don't really mean that, but you know,
It's off the beaten
the
track.
real. And so we worked on trying to write a guidebook, and our first attempt was awful, just terrible. But once we got the hang of it, we went back and rewrote it, and then from there, the Susie Guides were born.
Fantastic.
What a great way to launch
What's the
that.
next one?
Italy.
Oh,
Oh.
good.
Rome.
We
Rome
know
is
who'll
our
be standing in
next
line for that one.
We all love Italy.
Annie, this is so exciting. And, you know, I tell you, I wish you'd come back. And I want to learn about the Beijing Guide because that's something that a lot of people don't really know. I mean,
Yes.
so I look at Beijing and it's all Chinese to me. But with your guidebook, maybe I'll be able to walk around and not get
Right.
run down by a
Right.
rickshaw or something.
Right.
Great. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
hope
for
you'll come
having me.
back here on Around the World. We got to take a break.
I know.
I've run out of time. But coming up, Todd Powell is going to tell us about European train tours and especially how that will get us in and out of the Olympics and out of London. All righty. We'll be right back after these.